It's a universal epidemic, and it's increasing at an alarming rate. Today, more than a third of all Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. If current trends continue, this will increase to half of all Americans by the year 2020. Diabetes and pre-diabetes significantly increase the risk of heart disease and many other devastating complications. But the good news is that current trends don't have to continue, especially not in your case. Type 2 diabetes is not only preventable, it's also reversible. Diabetes can be undone. I'm Dr. Wes Youngberg. For the past 25 years, I've worked with thousands of clients to reverse diabetes and other chronic health conditions. If there's one thing my career has taught me about diabetes, it's this: there's hope for change.
I reversed my diabetes.
I was able to reverse diabetes now for over a year.
I reversed diabetes.
I reversed my diabetes.
I want you to experience dramatic health improvements too. That's why I've condensed 25 years of clinical practice into this dynamic new program. Diabetes Undone offers 9 steps and 40 short videos that will empower you to optimize nutrition, exercise, and other powerful lifestyle strategies to reclaim your health. You'll learn how to fight high blood sugars by addressing their underlying causes. I've seen hundreds of clients experience remarkable health improvements by following the same wellness strategies you'll learn in this course. Many of them are no longer diabetic. This course can also help type 1 diabetics to control the condition and prevent complications. Even better, the same strategies that fight diabetes also effectively combat heart disease, obesity, cancer, autoimmune disease, and many other health conditions. This course isn't just about diabetes. It's about experiencing optimal wellness in every area of your life: body, mind, and spirit. I'm confident that the strategies you'll learn will make a lasting impact in your life. So let's get started. Today is the first day of your new health story.
My name is Jennifer Jill Schwerzer. I am a licensed counselor, professional counselor, licensed in the state of Pennsylvania and nationally certified. Some people call people like me psychotherapist. Day in and day out, people come into my office and we work through their problems, and I see certain patterns that tend to repeat themselves. And I decided to boil down those patterns into a presentation that I call the 7 Deadly Psychological Sins. Let me share a little bit about what I mean about deadly psychological sins. These aren't moral sins per se, but they are things that we do that sabotage ourselves, hurt other people, or sabotage our relationships. In other words, they're ways in which we dysfunction, we might say it that way. The format of my videos here is that I'm going to start out with the deadly psychological sin. I'm going to develop it. I'm going to help explain what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to share with you a replacement behavior, because it's futile to just point out our problems. We need to come up with a replacement for those problems. We have an expression in behavioral psychology which says that negative reinforcement stops behavior, but positive reinforcement encourages behavior. So if we don't replace those negative patterns with something positive, then we're likely to relapse. Just like Jesus said, if you get one demon out, if you don't fill that room with something, 7 more are going to come in. So I'm going to give you the replacement behavior that will help to substitute for that dysfunctional pattern in your life or in the life of someone else. And I hope it's real helpful to you. I'm going to do my best to share something that's encouraging and uplifting and useful to you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Randy Bivens. There's a Yiddish blessing, bis 120, which translates, may you live to 120. Scientists at USC recently calculated the theoretical age a human should live to, 120. Also, Roy Wolford, a pioneer in the science of aging, suggested it's possible for the human body to last 120 years. This may be due to our DNA's remarkable ability to repair errors that it develops. Research suggests that this ability breaks down around 120. So why aren't we all living this long? On average, Americans are only living 78 years. Are there changes we can make in order to make those additional 42 years a reality? The answer is that there is not much stopping us from reclaiming those extra years and theoretically adding a third to our lifespans. The solution lies in 8 simple remedies, which we can start pursuing today. They will make us live longer and more satisfying lives than we may have imagined. First things first, did you know that most of mankind is chronically dehydrated? The problem comes with a simple solution. How much do you weigh? Just take your body weight in pounds and divide it in half. That number is the recommended number of ounces you should drink every day. Perhaps it goes without saying, but if you're exercising, working in hot weather, or have a fever, you'll need to drink more. Most of us live rather stagnant lifestyles, yet science has proven that movement is key to a healthy lifestyle. Walking is a great exercise and most should not have any trouble doing it. Just walk at least 2 miles a day at a speed of at least 3 miles an hour. It doesn't even matter if you break this time into short periods. Do this 6 days a week and you will be on your way to better health. Nutrition has a profound influence upon longevity. Dr. Roy Wolford, who I mentioned earlier, was able to double the lifespan of mice by simply restricting their caloric intake. In the West, we eat far too many calorie-dense foods. These are foods that provide us with too many calories, have fewer nutrients, and less fiber. Because of this, our stomachs fail to signal us that we should stop eating, and we consume too much. By eating more whole foods, raw or simply prepared, we would naturally eat fewer calories. The old saying, early to bed, early to rise, seems to have anticipated the science of good sleep. Getting adequate rest is very important for our health and longevity. While sleeping, many important functions occur that are necessary for good health. Rest allows our bodies the time needed to repair and to restore. Vitamin D has been shown to be very important in maintaining a healthy immune system. Vitamin D is one of those substances that our bodies need to eliminate free radicals, toxins in our modern environment, which are believed to cause many of our ailments, including cancer and autoimmune diseases. Getting plenty of sunshine each day is important in maintaining high levels of vitamin D. It sounds too simple to be true, but getting plenty of fresh air is important for health. Think about it. We can go weeks without food, days without water, but only minutes without air. Remember to take some deep breaths several times a day, preferably outdoors. When we examine the habits of people who live over 100 years of age, we notice an almost universal characteristic: a temperate lifestyle. Namely, They choose good things in moderation, and they avoid things that have negative effects on their health and their quality of life. Balance and good sense are key in all things. Have you ever heard the term blue zones? This is a designation given to a group of people who have had unexpected longevity. A common factor among these people is trust in divine power. This connection between spiritual and physical health has been shown to be significant in adding years to our lives. So, how do we live to 120? First, we start by beating the odds. Right now, the lifespan of the average American is 78 years. However, data suggests that if we were to follow the guidelines I just listed, it would not be unusual to live to 100 and beyond. Just imagine 60 years could be only the midpoint of our lives. If you're up for it, we'd love for you to join us on this journey to longer, healthier, and more fulfilled lives.
Today we're going to demonstrate a basic cream sauce. This is the very beginning of a number of products. For example, if you wanted to make cream of potato soup, this would be the product that you would put into. In addition, the product that we're going to demonstrate as it's completed today actually makes a very delicious gravy by itself. So let's get started. We have 2.5 cups of water. We have a 1/2 cup of raw cashews. We have 2 tablespoons of chicken flavoring. I'm using McKay's, the vegan product. There's 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1 tablespoon of onion powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And this is really very simple. We're going to add all of these products into our high-speed blender, and then we're just going to turn it on, blend until smooth, and we're done. At the conclusion of blending this, you would want to put it into a saucepan, put it onto the stove on medium heat, and stir regularly until it's thick. It should be just about boiling. With a high-speed blender, this should take about 10 seconds. If you have some concern, you can always put your hand into it, feel if there's any grittiness left. It should be very smooth. You would then want to decant this into a saucepan, put it onto the stove, and stir regularly until thick. So we've cooked this on medium heat, stirring regularly for 3 to 4 minutes, and as you can see, it's thickened up very nicely. If it's too thick, you can always put a little water in it. If it's not thick enough for your taste, you can actually put a little more cornstarch. If you put the cornstarch into some liquid, stir it up, and then add it, you can make it to the thickness that you want. And you can see that's a very nice consistency. Cream sauce, you could use it as a gravy. Again, you can use it as the beginning of a cream sauce in any of your recipes. Enjoy.
When I first began my study of human psychology, I focused on individual psychology, how an individual could be healthy. And out of that study came the book 13 Weeks to Peace, and also the series, The 7 Deadly Psychological Sins. But partway through the process, I realized that individual human beings couldn't be healthy apart from relationships, because we're made in the image of a relational God, and we're just set up for and wired for relationships. So I realized that I needed to write another book and have another series of videos. And then came 13 Weeks to Love and 7 Deadly Relationship Sins. In the 7 Deadly Relationship Sins, I basically point out 7 habits that we engage in our relationships that either harm or in some cases destroy the relationship. So what I do is I present the deadly sin, and then I present to you a replacement for that deadly sin. Because negative reinforcement stops behavior, but positive reinforcement encourages behavior. So I don't want to just say, don't think about a pink elephant, because then you'll think about a pink elephant. But I want to say, don't think about a pink elephant, think about a green giraffe and redirect your energy into something positive. Hopefully, when you start to learn to incorporate these positive habits into your relationships, you'll experience a higher level of health and contentment and happiness and, of course, ultimately, love.
Why did you get out of bed this morning? What motivated you to wake up and begin the day? Maybe you had to be at work or school on time or get to an appointment. In the Japanese culture, it's important to know your ikigai. Ikigai is defined as a reason to get up in the morning, or one's purpose for living. The teaching goes that each person must discover an ikigai in order to live a meaningful and satisfying life. An ikigai is more important than getting to an appointment on time or surviving the daily rat race. It could be to spend time with your family, to excel in a particular skill, or to serve the community. Wilbur and Orville Wright were the brilliant brothers who invented, built, and flew the first successful airplane. For years, they worked tirelessly to make their dream a reality. In reflecting on the experience, Wilbur Wright said, "We could hardly wait to get up in the morning." Flying had become their ikigai. What's yours? What gives you the sense of purpose and meaning? If I had to pick an ikigai, it would be this: helping people improve their health. I've been fascinated with wellness since I was a teenager. Where did this interest come from? My mother. When I was just 10 years old, my mother was diagnosed with glioblastoma, an aggressive and malignant brain tumor. My family lived in Bolivia, South America at the time, but we rushed back to the United States so that my mom could get the best possible treatment. But despite the doctor's efforts, my mother lost her battle with cancer. She passed away just 9 months later. It was devastating to lose my mom. I had so many questions about why. Why did this happen to her? What caused the cancer? Could something have been done to prevent it? One day, about 3 years after her death, I was raking leaves in the yard with my dad, and I finally worked up the courage to ask him, "Dad, why did Mom get cancer and die?" I remember my dad got very sad and thoughtful, and after a moment, he simply said, "Wes, I just don't know." As we continued raking, a new thought entered my mind. I wish I knew what my health risks are and what changes I can make so I don't get this disease like Mom did, and so I can help other people live healthier lives too. That autumn day was the beginning of my fascination with health. I soon started reading health books and articles and listening to lectures, just devouring so much information, as much as I could. I studied sports medicine in college, then earned a master's degree in nutrition and a doctorate in clinical preventive care at Loma Linda University. During my training, I became very interested in helping people with lifestyle diseases, such as diabetes and heart disease. This passion eventually led me to spend nearly 14 years on the island of Guam. While there, I researched the diabetes epidemic throughout Micronesia. I directed a diabetes reversal program, provided public health education, and worked with the Guam government to improve screening and treatment guidelines for diabetes. I had such a rewarding experience on Guam. I worked with so many incredible people who'd made tremendous progress in improving their health, reversing their diabetes, and learning to live well again. Their stories inspired me to continue my work. I now serve as a nutritionist and lifestyle medicine consultant at my private practice in Temecula, California. I'm also assistant clinical professor at Loma Linda University Schools of Medicine and Public Health. I've also had the privilege to be one of the founding directors and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. When I wake up in the morning, I'm excited to come to work because I know I will interact with people who have tremendous potential to improve their health. I see clients with diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, obesity, cancer, and a variety of other health concerns. My goal is to inspire each one with hope and give them the tools they need to reduce disease risk and optimize wellness. I don't know what your ikigai is or what in life is most valuable to you, but I do know that you're much more likely to reach your goals with a healthy body and a healthy mind. That's why I'm glad you've chosen to begin this health journey. The strategies you learn throughout this course will empower you to optimize your health and greatly improve your quality of life.
First deadly psychological sin is criticism. Criticism. I don't know if you've borne the brunt of being raised in a critical home, but human beings are by nature negatively focused and problem focused. In fact, research has shown that 75% of the interactions between teachers in elementary school and their students is negative. Research has also shown that in a child's lifetime, from birth to 18 years old, he hears the word no from his parent 148,000 times. Bottom line of all this is that positive interaction, and particularly affirmation versus criticism, is a learned skill. It's something we have to do proactively and intentionally, or we will revert back to our critical patterns. Story is told of a young man who was complaining about the hymns at church. He said they were very boring. His father said, well, if you're going to complain about it, then write one of your own. Boy went into his bedroom and he wrote the hymn, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. The young man was Isaac Watts, and he went on to write over 350, many of them famous hymns, including Joy to the World. So there's a place for criticism. Criticism serves a function. We, by nature, as human beings, are capable of reason and what we call critical thinking. All criticism is not bad, but we need to sort of capture this beast and train it so that it benefits us and others. Scientific research has shown that people that are raised in critical environments where there's much criticism among the family of origin tend to have more depression diagnoses and more depressive symptoms. In fact, a critical environment at home has been associated with a broad spectrum of mental illnesses such as schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. I have a quote here from Abraham Lincoln. He has the right to criticize who has the heart to help. In order to find out if you have the heart to help that person, I recommend that you ask yourself 3 questions before criticizing them. Number 1, do I love to criticize or do I hate to criticize? If you love it, I think you need to give yourself pause there. Number 2, am I doing it to help? Is that my motive? Number 3, will I do it kindly and will I do it to that person's face? Beware of cyber criticism. Cyber criticism can easily turn into a form of cyberbullying. It's really best when you're addressing sensitive topics to talk to that person eyeball to eyeball, so to speak. The replacement for criticism, I'm sure you're dying to know, very simple. It's affirmation. Learn to affirm people. This does not come naturally to us. I recommend that if you're a critaholic, we might call it, that you go on a criticism fast for 2 to 3 weeks where you criticize nothing, no one, not even yourself, for 3 weeks. I challenge you to try that. And that afterward, when you issue a criticism, always do it in what we call affirmation sandwich style. You affirm that person, then you issue the criticism, and then you follow it up with another affirmation. This helps to soften the blow. Marriage expert John Gottman says that in order to neutralize the emotional impact of a criticism, one must affirm 5 times. So remember that ratio, 5 affirmations to 1 criticism. What is the effect of an affirming environment in the home? We've talked about the effect of a critical environment. What's the effect of an affirming environment? Some research has shown that there's a positive correlation between fatherly affirmation and high self-esteem in girls. There's a negative correlation between fatherly affirmation and fear of intimacy. So in other words, if fathers affirm their daughters, they're likely to feel good about themselves and they're likely to be able to develop healthy relationships. Sounds like a good thing to do. Try starting today affirming someone that you would normally criticize. And usually, I hate to say it, but it's those that are closest to us that we tend to be so critical of. But try turning that around and intentionally, proactively affirming that person. They won't know what happened.
Today, I'm going to tell you about a product that will reduce your risk of heart attack. It is at least as effective as maintaining an ideal body weight, reducing high blood pressure, reducing cholesterol, or stopping smoking. It is virtually free, and there are no side effects in healthy people. This product, if taken in recommended amounts, will cure or significantly reduce the incidence of many diseases. These include kidney stones, gallbladder disease, constipation, urinary tract infections, high blood pressure, glaucoma, and venous blood clots. Although not yet proven scientifically, this product is thought to be important in reducing or improving most diseases known to man. On top of that, there are no adverse effects in healthy people. In fact, overall health and well-being are improved. Have you figured out what we're talking about? 2 hydrogen atoms bound to 1 oxygen atom forming H2O, or water. A study published in the American Journal of Epidemiology showed that those who drank more than 5 glasses of water per day had significantly less death from coronary heart disease compared to those who drank less than 2 glasses per day. Dr. Chan, the principal investigator, wrote, "Basically, not drinking enough water can be as harmful to your heart as smoking. Drinking over 5 glasses of water per day will cut the risk of coronary heart disease in half. This has an equal or greater effect than any other well-known preventive measure." The researchers also noted that if people drank anything other than pure water, their risk for coronary heart disease actually increased. This includes tea, coffee, soda, and even fruit juices. Dr. Chan noted, people need to be made aware that there is a difference, at least for heart health, whether they get their fluids from plain water or from sodas. Perhaps you're wondering, how is it that something as simple as drinking water has such a substantial effect on our coronary health? Well, it has been shown that dehydration elevates blood stickiness and increases blood elements that promote clotting. When elevated, these are risk factors for coronary heart disease. So, how much water should you drink? Here's a good rule of thumb. Take your body weight in pounds and divide it in half. That number is the recommended number of ounces you should drink every day. Naturally, your need for water increases with exercise, warmer temperatures, and fever. When dealing with these situations, use your common sense and make sure you drink enough. It is helpful to drink at least 1 glass of water as soon as you wake up in the morning, as well as a glass of water at bedtime. This has been shown to significantly reduce your heart attack risk for that night. Your body is 75% water and your brain is 85% water. Water is more than a simple solvent. It is important in many body functions. With all of these benefits, why don't we hear more about water? Could it be because you cannot patent water? There's no profit in its research or its promotion. As you can see, in our goal to live longer, better, healthier lives, we need to develop the habit of drinking generous amounts of water in conjunction with reducing or eliminating the consumption of tea, coffee, soda, and fruit drinks. We just need plain pure water. Because of the risk of BPA and plastics, it's best to avoid most bottled water. It's a good idea to filter tap water. This can be effective in most situations with a good charcoal filter. This will also save you money in the long run. For those of us with well water, it's a good idea to have your water tested to make sure that it does not contain toxins such as heavy metals. So, in our goal to live 120 years of age, drinking plenty of water is definitely one of the most important habits that we can develop.
Today we'll be making a no-bake, plant-based lemon cheesecake. And it's so easy and delicious. You can make it with just a few ingredients from your cupboard. But first I'm going to start with the crust. And it's a no-bake crust. It calls for 1 cup of our almonds, 1 cup of our shredded, unsweetened coconut, a pinch of salt, 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice, and 1 tablespoon of honey. The tools that you'll need for this recipe is a basic food processor and a springform pan. But any pan will work, but I like this because it pops out and it's a cheesecake. Okay, so let's get started. We're gonna combine our dry ingredients first. And we wanna put these in our food processor so that it turns into a nice flour-like consistency. And that was our almonds and our coconut. Even add our pinch of salt. And the sea salt is wonderful because it actually makes your cheesecake sweeter. So we're gonna process this for a couple of minutes until we get the nice flour-like consistency. Okay, so what we have is a nice fine flour consistency. It has a nice texture. And so we're just gonna add our wet ingredients, our lemon juice and our honey. Which incidentally has a lot of healing properties. It's good for burns. It's great if you have a sore throat. Make a little honey tea and it helps to coat your throat. So now I'm gonna go ahead and process this, and what I'm looking for is a nice consistency where it will stick and press well in my pan. And there you have it. Can you believe it? It's basically 5 ingredients and you just made a beautiful no-bake crust. We're gonna press this into our springform pan. And you could do some variations to this. If you didn't want lemon juice, you could substitute just liquid vanilla and you'd have more of a basic crust. But since we're making a lemon cheesecake, we want to have that little extra something special. And you can use your hands or a spatula. I just like to use my fingers to get it all pressed in really nice. And this crust, if you really wanted to, you could bake it at about 350 for about 12 minutes to toast the almonds and your coconut. Or you could just add toasted coconut and almonds to it and it would be wonderful and delicious. Okay, so there is your no-bake crust. Okay, so we're gonna be making our lemon cheesecake filling. And this filling is no bake, it's almost 100% raw, and you won't even believe that it has no dairy. In place of the dairy, we're gonna be using 3 cups of our raw cashews. You can soak them for about 2 to 4 hours if you'd like, but since I have a high-speed blender, soaking is optional. 1.5 cups of our almond milk that's unsweetened. You can get this in the grocery store or you can make your own. 1 cup of our lemon juice. We're gonna be using 1 cup of our coconut oil, 3 tablespoons of our lecithin, 1 teaspoon of our alcohol-free vanilla flavoring. I really love Frontier because it doesn't have any alcohol in it, and because it is a mostly raw dessert and we're not baking it, we don't want to have any alcohol because that will impart some flavor. 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 cup of honey, and we're going to use a pinch of turmeric, and that's going to give it its special lemony color. It's not going to impart any flavor, it's just going to give us that yellow color. And then I'm going to zest 1 teaspoon of a lemon for you, and let's get started. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put everything into our blender except for the coconut oil and the soy lecithin, which I'll talk about later. Okay, cashews are really good for the immune system, and they also help with depression. Then we're going to go ahead and add our fresh squeezed lemon juice. And incidentally, lemon juice is good for the immune system as well. We're going to add our unsweetened almond milk, and it calls for 1.5 cups. You can use any kind of unsweetened milk if you want, as long as it's plant-based. I really like the almond milk because it doesn't impart any flavor. It's very neutral, and this is a great almond milk because it only has 30 calories per serving, so you know that you're kind of really getting more benefit with less calories. I'm going to add my honey, which also is good for the immune system. You have a nice tonic going here if you can kind of see the trend. We have our lemons, and we have our honey, and we have our cashews, and then I'm going to add my sea salt. And I like using sea salt because a lot of salts that you buy in the store, even sea salt, will have an ingredient called dextrose. And that has sugar, and we don't want that. So we want to look for our sea salt that has no sugar. We're going to add 1 teaspoon of our vanilla extract. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do our pinch of turmeric. Turmeric has really healthy properties. It is good for inflammation. So we're going to add that for our color. And again, it won't impart any flavor. And then what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to zest a lemon. This is a microplane, and you can just zest with, a regular zester, but I really love this because it goes very fast and you get a lot of flavor. And this, of course, is optional. You don't have to do the lemon zest, but since I'm doing a lemon cheesecake, I really want to make this recipe pop with lemon. And so I'm just basically spinning my lemon, and then you tap it and you get all your nice zest out. And this calls for 1 teaspoon of our lemon zest. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I want to blend this to a really, really creamy consistency. I don't want any chunks because I'm trying to mimic what a cheesecake would be with using cream. So your cashews and everything is going to just blend beautifully, and we want to make sure there's no chunks. And there is our beautiful filling. It's not done yet. We're going to add the fat last, which is our coconut oil. And then we're going to add this ingredient, which is our soy lecithin, which is going to emulsify the liquid from the fat. And we want those two to stay together, so the soy lecithin is going to do that for you. This is an optional ingredient. You don't have to do it if you can't find it. You can get it at your health food store. But I also like the soy lecithin because if I leave my cheesecake out on the counter, it's going to stay looking like a cheesecake. It's not going to fall apart and separate. So this is a nice ingredient to add. And we want to add it last because we are going to emulsify 1 cup of our coconut oil. This is our secret ingredient. This is what's going to make it stand up like a regular cheesecake. Because once coconut oil gets cold, then it's going to firm up. And so this is what's really holding it together. And not only that, coconut oil is really healthy. It's full of lauric acid and caprylic acid, and it's really perfect for your immune system. Okay, so now we're gonna blend this all again, and we want it to all emulsify and mix together so it's nice and creamy again. Okay, so our filling is blended, and we have our beautiful lemon filling for our cheesecake. Now, you don't have to just make a cheesecake if you don't want. You can actually turn this into ice cream. And what you would do is you just pour the same batter into your ice cream maker and follow the manufacturer's instructions. In about 20 minutes, you'll have beautiful lemon cheesecake ice cream. And the other thing you can do is if you didn't want to have the crust, you could turn this into a mousse. And what I would do is I would just put these in some bowls, set it up in the refrigerator for about 1 to 2 hours, and you're going to have a nice lemon mousse. But with this finished product, we're going to put this in the refrigerator for about 8 hours or overnight to firm it up. And you can do it quicker by putting it into the freezer, and it would take about an hour. So here is your no-bake lemon cheesecake, and we're going to set this up and show you what the finished product looks like. So here is our beautiful lemon no-bake cheesecake, and it has no dairy. I'm going to show you how to cut it. Basically, what you want to do is you just want to find the middle. And you take your chef knife and you make a cut. You could continue to cut on the other side too, depending on how many people you're serving. But since we're only going to just be doing one cheesecake, we're going to only do a few cuts. Then you find the other part of your cheesecake. And you have a nice quarter here. And it makes about 8 to 16, depending on how many slices you want or how thin you want your cheesecake. So I'm going to just cut this in half again too. And I'm just going to cut the other half of my quarter cheesecake. And what we paired this with is raspberries. We took some fresh raspberries and just crushed them. We added a little bit of honey, just a pinch of sea salt, added some lemon juice, and we have this beautiful jam to go over the top of it. And because it's lemon, it's going to pair well with anything. You could put some blueberries, some strawberries, and of course raspberries, which we have right here. And here is your beautiful no-bake cheesecake.
You know, anger is a very complex emotion. The story is told of a little girl working on an English project for school. She came to her father and she said, "Dad, I need to know the difference between anger and exasperation." Her father said, "Let me demonstrate the difference." Picked up the phone, he called a random number in the phone book. The man picked up the phone. The father said, "Is Melvin there?" The man said, "There's no one here by that name." And he hung up the phone. The father called the same number a second later, and the man picked up the phone and the father said, "Is Melvin there?" The man said, "You just called this number. I told you there was no one here by that name. Stop calling this number," and he slammed down the phone. The father turned to his daughter and said, "That was anger. Now let me demonstrate exasperation." And he called the same number back and said, "This is Melvin. Have there been any calls for me?" As I said, anger is a very complicated and nuanced emotion, but every mature adult must learn how to manage their anger. Sigmund Freud based his view of anger management on the popular scientific theory of the day. It was called hydraulic theory, and the basic premise was that tension or pressure in any part of a given system would need to be released or would simply move to another part of the system. Freud saw human emotions in that way. He reasoned that if we don't vent anger, it will move to another part of the emotional system and cause problems. And so he recommended this process of venting. And various other professionals took that a step further and developed various modalities such as anger work, where individuals will punch pillows and throw things in order to vent their anger. There was even at one point the belief that families should engage in what was called called the Vesuvius hour. And during the Vesuvius hour, which they would have at a particular time of the evening, they would shout at one another and throw things and scream and vent all their emotions, after which it was thought they would calm down and have a wonderful evening. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way, because eventually we realized that when people express anger, it actually deepens the feelings of anger. The more you express those feelings of anger, the deeper the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral hold that anger has upon an individual. Probably the reason that anger work really was effective for some people was because it was exercise. There was a lot of physical activity involved. So any good anger management program will have that component. It will have the component of physical exercise, because the reality is that stress causes stress hormones to build up in the body, and really the only way they can be metabolized is through physical exercise. Another important component of any good anger management program is learning how to control our thought life, because our emotions are largely the result of the way we think about things. And so sometimes we have to work hard to revise the way we look at things. For instance, a person might think, everyone should always treat me well. And that creates within them an unrealistic expectation. And because they don't get what they expect, they end up angry. Now, for me, the distorted thought was that I should control other people's treatment of me. I thought that I was responsible for making them treat me well. And when they didn't treat me well, I would become extremely frustrated, and rather than accept the situation, I would become angry. In fact, let me tell you a story from my own family. My husband is a quiet man, and I tend to be a little more explosive by nature. And so we were having an argument, and unfortunately we were having this argument in front of the children. And the louder I got, the quieter my husband got. Well, afterward, I went to my daughter, and I wanted to apologize. But before I could get one word out of my mouth, she said, "Daddy had a short temper." And I couldn't understand why she was mentioning his short temper. And then she said, "And you had a long temper." I eventually learned that I was not responsible for pressuring my husband to treat me well. And when I began to understand that I was not responsible for his behavior, I could simply walk away when I was frustrated and revisit the situation later. And my anger problem was largely solved. Carrying anger with us day by day, hour by hour even, can be very harmful. A study that was done out of Boston University said that hostility levels are a better predictor of heart disease than traditional factors such as high cholesterol, high blood pressure, smoking, obesity. Another study out of Nova Scotia said that there was a difference between what they called constructive anger and destructive anger. They found that destructive anger had these harmful health effects, but constructive anger did not. This is fully in line with what the scriptures teach when they say, "Be angry, but sin not." Probably the most significant damage that we do through anger is to our relationships. The story is told of a father whose son had a difficult time controlling his temper. The father said to his son, "Next time you feel angry, take hammer and nails out to the fence and pound nails into the fence until you calm down." Well, the little boy did that, and the first day he pounded 37 nails into the fence. Day by day, however, he pounded fewer nails in, until finally he didn't need to pound any nails at all. He had learned how to control his temper. But the father took him out to the fence and said, "Look at the fence, son. The fence will never be the same." Such it is with relationships. When we lose our temper, sometimes the relationship is never the same. Escalation is the deadly relationship sin we're talking about here, where we lose control of our temper and get in an argument that either causes people to throw verbal attacks at one another or sometimes even physical attacks. Escalation tends to feed off of reactive cycles. Reactive cycles occur when, in a relationship between two people, one engages in a certain behavior toward the other, and the other engages in a behavior in reaction to that behavior. Then the first individual responds in reaction to the second individual, and then there's another reaction, and then another reaction, and we get to the place where we don't know where that person ends and we begin. Reactive cycles are so powerful that they're very, very difficult to break. It's really only a miracle that can break them sometimes. The way out of a reactive cycle is up. The way out is up. I send up a prayer to God when I know I'm in the middle of a dangerous situation where I may react. Instead of responding conscientiously, I may react emotionally. I recommend that people shoot up a prayer to heaven and ask God to give them wisdom as to how to interact with the person with whom they're tempted to react in a non-productive, destructive way. The healthiest marriages are not the ones in which the individuals never argue. The healthiest marriages are the ones where the individuals know when to back out of an argument. And that's why the replacement behavior for escalation is time out, what we call time out, learning how to back out of a potentially escalative situation. What I recommend to married couples, for instance, but this applies to any kind of relationship, is that they agree ahead of time that at any time when they feel themselves escalating, they can call time out and the other person is obligated to agree to that time out. Then right then and there, when they call the time out, they schedule a time in the future so that nobody feels like this situation is going to get shut down and never addressed. They schedule a time in the future when, in calmness, once they've calmed down and regained possession of themselves, they will address the problem and solve it together in a non-escalated state. So next time you feel like escalating, take a time out. You'll thank yourself.
Have you ever had a major paradigm shift? Your entire life you held a certain belief or opinion, only to discover it just wasn't true? A paradigm shift occurs when the usual and accepted way of doing or thinking about something changes completely. It's a radical 180-degree turn from one way of thinking to another. When I was 24, I thought I was the healthiest person I knew. I was very athletic, I worked out regularly, played basketball, ate a vegetarian diet, and tried my best to make good health choices. I was studying nutrition at the time and felt like I had my health under control until the day I got my cholesterol tested. My university was offering free testing. I felt certain that I had an ideal level, but I decided to check it out for curiosity's sake. When the results came back, I was shocked. Despite my inflated health ego, my cholesterol was 244. This placed me at a significant increased risk for developing heart disease. My numbers were off the chart, and I was only 24 years old. That was a paradigm shift. It was the first time I realized that my body wasn't invincible. Something was missing in my health plan. I wasn't the wellness superstar I had imagined. Even though this experience was humbling for me, it was also very valuable. I looked for the missing links in my health plan and discovered that I needed to be more careful about my food choices. I had been eating a higher fat diet, high cholesterol diet full of cheese, eggs, dairy, junk food. These foods were vegetarian, but they weren't healthy. They were driving my cholesterol through the roof. I quickly made changes to my diet and soon my cholesterol came down. 30 years later, I'm still grateful for that paradigm shift. Because my paradigm changed, I was able to take action to reclaim my health. Not long after my cholesterol incident, I had another paradigm shift. This time it was about diabetes. It was 1985 and I was sitting in a medical lecture by Dr. James Anderson, who was a leading expert in diabetes research and treatment. Dr. Anderson was discussing the dramatic changes his diabetic patients had experienced. He had taken hospitalized type 2 diabetic patients with poorly controlled blood sugars and simply changed their diet from the standard American diet to a diet high in fiber and plant-based foods. Within weeks, the patients experienced dramatic improvements. Their need for insulin and oral medications dropped anywhere from 75 to 90%. Many patients improved so much that they no longer fit the diagnostic criteria for diabetes. I could hardly believe my ears. I had always been taught that diabetes was incurable, that diabetics would struggle with the disease for the rest of their lives. But this respected physician and researcher was sharing case after case of patients who had reversed their type 2 diabetes completely. Sure, they needed to continue their healthy habits so the disease wouldn't return. But the point is that they didn't have diabetes anymore. That was the beginning of my diabetes paradigm shift. And after working with diabetics for the past 25 years, I'm more convinced than ever that this paradigm is true. By addressing the cause of illness, type 2 diabetics can experience dramatic health improvements, avoid complications, and possibly even reverse the condition. What a powerful paradigm. Our healthcare system is in desperate need of a paradigm shift. We live in the most advanced medical age in human history. We know more about healthcare than we've ever known before, and yet we're sicker than ever. Lifestyle-related diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and obesity threaten to destroy our health and even cripple our economy. 26 million Americans have diabetes, and 79 million have prediabetes. Both these conditions significantly increase the risk of cardiovascular disease and other complications. At least 90% of these cases are type 2 diabetes, a condition that is preventable and often reversible. Healthy lifestyle habits, such as nutrition and exercise, can stop diabetes in its tracks. But wait a second. If type 2 diabetes can be improved so dramatically, why don't we hear about this more often? Or about this from our medical community? Why aren't diabetic patients taught the valuable information they need to transform their health? Unfortunately, the prevailing medical paradigm teaches that diabetes is a chronic, ongoing disease. Once you got it, you've got it. You can try to manage the disease to prevent complications, but the diagnosis will stay with you forever. Although this paradigm isn't evidence-based, it continues to pervade much of medical science and the medical community. In our fast-paced, money-driven healthcare system, providers often don't have adequate time to educate patients about how to be healthy. All too often, patients are treated for the symptoms of the disease, while the underlying causes of disease are just simply not addressed. Imagine that you walk into your bathroom and find a puddle of water all over the floor. You run to the closet, grab a mop, and begin cleaning it up as quickly as you can, but despite your efforts, the puddle continues to grow. It spreads into the hallway, the living room, the bedrooms. No matter how fast you mop, the puddle grows faster. Where's the water coming from? Just then, you notice that the bathtub is overflowing and the faucet is still on. What's your next step? Will you keep mopping? Satisfied that you're working hard to address the situation? No. You've got to turn the faucet off. Addressing the symptoms of disease without dealing with the cause of disease is like mopping up a wet floor without turning off the faucet. It's an outdated paradigm, and it simply doesn't work. The good news is that just like a faucet can be turned off, the factors that promote disease can be turned off. If you struggle with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, you don't have to settle for a mop-up job. You can move past the old diabetes paradigm and embrace the new.
The second deadly psychological sin is complaining. Know anything about that? I believe that complaining is based on a sense of entitlement. We're kind of outraged customers that feel that we deserve better. And so at the foundation of complaining is this, what we call entitlement mentality. And of course, that needs to be dealt with. But complaining in and of itself causes a whole plethora of problems. First of all, every time you complain, you reinforce those negative thoughts. So what happens is with each complaint, that problem gets a little bit bigger in your field of vision. And pretty soon, all that fills your field of vision is all of this negativity. As a result, a person develops what we call low frustration tolerance. Think of it in the sense of they're carrying around a very full glass of water. All these negative things are right up to the brim, and the slightest extra drop causes the water to overflow. If you keep focusing on the negative, you'll end up in that situation where you have a very low tolerance for anything aggravating. Let's face it, in reality, there are positives. Life isn't all bad. It's not all good. It's not all bad. We have a choice as to what we're going to focus on. Story is told of a cowboy. Cowboy was driving down the road. He had his dog in the back of his truck, and he had a trailer behind the truck pulling his horse. There was a terrible accident. The vehicles were strewn all over the road. A policeman came upon the scene. The policeman first came to the dog. He realized the dog was not going to make it, so he shot the dog. Then he came upon the horse, and he realized the horse wasn't going to make it, so he shot the horse. Then he found the cowboy. He'd been thrown out of the vehicle into a field, and he was lying there watching the policeman shoot his animals. The policeman came to him and looked down at him and said, "How are you doing?" And the cowboy said, "I've never felt better." When we complain, there's a certain amount of payoff. You know, Dr. Phil says, what's the payoff? That means that we're getting something out of what we're doing. In fact, we have an expression in behavioral psychology that goes like this. It says, all behavior is operative, meaning that in everything that we do, we're either trying to get something or we're trying to avoid something. In either case, achieve something. We're getting something out of it. So even when we engage in a negative behavior that ultimately hurts us, there is a temporary, at least, payoff in that behavior. So normally people really kind of, on some level, enjoy complaining. Makes them feel maybe a little righteous. But in the cowboy's case, the payoff for complaining was really bad, and the payoff for not complaining was quite high, so he didn't complain. The replacement for complaining is gratitude. When we realize we really don't deserve the blessings that fall all around us and upon us every day of our lives, we start to feel grateful. I prescribe gratitude to people that are negatively focused, clients that have been so consumed with negativity and complaining that they've made themselves depressed. I prescribe it like a pill. I say, this is what you have to do. You have to practice this morning and evening. I tell them they must go home and they must think of 3 things for which they are grateful every evening and share it with another person. And then the following morning when they arise, think of 3 things for which they are grateful and share it with another person. It's amazing how difficult this is for some people. Sometimes in the middle of a counseling session, I'll say, are you grateful for anything? And they'll try to think of something, and then I'll pressure them a little, and they'll try to think of something, and maybe they'll think of one little thing. Then they'll go right back to their negative thinking. And finally, I'll say to them, the real problem here is not all the problems in your life. The problem here is that you're focused on those problems. Let's work on changing your focus. I want to tell you about a study that showed the effect of gratitude. It was performed on undergraduate students over a 10-week period of time. The undergrads were split into 3 groups. They completed a weekly log of their emotions. 1/3 were to write about 5 impacting events. 1/3 were to write about 5 hassles, and 1/3 were to write 5 things for which they were grateful. Then they wanted to measure how these different focuses affected their emotions. The study says, the thankful group reported fewer physical complaints overall than the hassles group and spent significantly more time exercising than did the subjects in the other 2 groups. So gratitude had the effect of making people take care of themselves better. And in addition to that, they just plain felt better physically as a result of gratitude. It's worth a try, isn't it? reminds me of a quote by one of my favorite authors, Ellen White. She said, "Nothing tends more to promote health of body and soul than does a spirit of gratitude and praise."
In order to reach our goal of living to 120, we must make several healthy choices. One of these choices is the decision to exercise. In fact, physical fitness is the most important predictor for longevity. According to the CDC, only 23% of Americans get any regular light to moderate physical activity. In light of this information, is it any wonder that we are in the middle of an obesity epidemic? Regular physical activity decreases our risk for many diseases, including obesity, high blood pressure, coronary heart disease, stroke, diabetes, osteoporosis, many cancers, anxiety, and depression. An ongoing study which began in 1984 has been monitoring the difference between two groups of people at Stanford University, the Ever Runners and the Never Runners. The health of these two groups has been tracked for nearly 3 decades. Not surprisingly, the data has shown that exercise is critical to health. Over the years, compared with the never exercisers, people who exercise regularly showed improved aerobic capacity, better heart health, increased bone mass, less inflammation, less physical disability, and even improved thinking, learning, and memory. They also lived significantly longer. However, what most astounded the researchers was the fact that the runners continued to have improved health and longevity even if they converted to less vigorous activity later in life. By the 19th year of the study, 15% of the runners had died compared to 34% of the non-runners. Many people claim that they do not have enough time in the day to exercise. But let me reveal a little secret. For every minute of exercise, you gain 2 minutes of longevity. So you just do a little borrowing. You borrow from the future. Take time to care for your body now, and it will pay off double in the future. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American spends 2 hours and 45 minutes a day watching television. However, time spent participating in sports, exercise, or recreation was drastically less, the average being only 18 minutes a day. The numbers speak for themselves. We have enough time to take care of our bodies. We simply need to prioritize. There have been several studies that show physical activity can help prevent many types of cancer, particularly colon and breast cancer. Current cancer patients can also benefit from exercise. For example, the most physically active breast cancer patients reduce their risk of cancer-related death and recurrence by up to 40%. Increasing your physical activity after the age of 50 has tremendous benefits. Not only can it add 2 to 4 years to your life, but a recent study has shown that people who remain physically active remain disability-free for an additional 5.7 years. So you will not only live longer, but the quality of your life will be better for a longer period of time. Of all the health habit choices we can make, maintaining physical fitness is the most important. In fact, given the choice between quitting smoking or staying fit is slightly healthier and would lead to a longer lifespan. It has been shown that burning as little as 500 calories per week has positive health benefits. That is the equivalent of walking only 5 miles a week. However, this is a case of if a little is good, more is better. We recommend walking 2 to 3 miles a day, 6 days a week. That would burn an extra 1,800 calories per week. You would gain significant health benefits as we have described and be getting closer to our goal of living to 120.
Our next relationship sin is invalidation. Invalidation is one of the more subtle of the relationship sins, but it's probably the most universal of all of them. A group of researchers at the University of Denver put together a program called CPREP, the Christian Prevention and Relationship Enhancement Program. And in that program, they identify 4 traits that they have discovered through research are present in almost all failed relationships. Number 2 are strong predictors of divorce. Number 3 are often learned in the home of origin. And number 4 tend to neutralize all of the good in any given relationship. Those 4 traits are escalation, invalidation, negative interpretation, and withdrawal. We're going to be addressing invalidation. Often with these relationship problems, there is what we might call comorbidity. There's more than one, and they kind of tend to feed off one another. For instance, if someone is in the habit of invalidating people, that can trigger the other person to escalate and get angry because they feel shut down. Let me give you some examples of invalidation. It's very subtle, but just let me give you some broad categories and some specific example in each category. For instance, ordering, smile, be happy, cheer up, get over it, grow up. What about just ordering people to look different than they look? Don't look so sad. Don't look so smug. What about isolating? You're the only one who feels that way. It doesn't bother anyone else, you know. What about minimizing your feelings? You must be kidding. You can't be serious. Seriously? What about using reason? There's no reason for you to feel that way. Or you're not being rational. Or what about judging and labeling? You're a crybaby. You're too sensitive. You are overreacting. What about telling people how they should act or how they should feel? You should be excited. You should be happy. You shouldn't complain. You shouldn't be unhappy. What about sarcasm and mocking? Oh, you poor thing. Did I hurt your little feelings? What about guilt trips? Don't you ever think of anyone but yourself? What about my feelings? What about philosophizing or cliches? Time heals all wounds. Every cloud has a silver lining. There's a reason for everything. Or what about religionizing? I'll pray for you. God will help you. And this type of thing. It's only designed to shut the person down, not to really try to minister to them. I was presenting this in a public forum and a lady raised her hand and she said, "You've just taken away everything that I ever say. I'm going to have to sit quietly for the rest of my life." And I realized in that moment that it really is only invalidation. Many of these things are actually good things to say at certain points, but it becomes invalidation when you fail to first listen carefully and empathize with the person. And so the replacement for invalidation is good listening, active, empathic listening is the replacement for invalidation. James chapter 1 and verse 19 says, "Let every man be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath." Did you ever notice that we are exactly the opposite? We are quick to speak and slow to hear and quick to wrath. And it's no accident that our slowness to hear ultimately leads to escalation. Active listening is so effective that the FBI has formulated a plan called the Behavioral Change Stairway Model that is used in crisis negotiation with like people holding people hostage and situations like that. So here's the stairway model. It begins with, you guessed it, active listening. Then on the foundation of that active listening comes empathy. And then on the foundation of that empathy comes rapport that you build with the person. And then on that rapport, you can build influence. And then finally, you can ask for a behavior change. When the FBI uses this process that begins with active listening, it can make a life or death difference for people. And sometimes we find our relationships to be kind of hostage situations. And it can make a life or death difference how we deal with them. Some of the skills involved in active listening are, for instance, paraphrasing. Someone is saying, oh, this person insults me purposefully and speaks to me in a very cruel way in order to destroy my confidence. And you might paraphrase that by saying, you mean they're emotionally abusive? Another active listening technique is summarizing, listening to what a person says and then saying, now wait a minute, let me make sure I got you right, and giving them a big picture feedback of what they just told you. Another aspect of active listening is asking open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are simply questions that can't be answered with a yes or a no. So you would begin the question with one of 4 words: what, where, when, and how. When you are trying to engage in active listening, do not use questions that begin with why, because it's too easy for those types of questions to come off as an accusation. So use these open-ended questions that begin with what, where, when, and how to give people an opportunity to express themselves and to process whatever it is that they're dealing with. Another good active listening technique is using I statements, simply saying to a person, you know, when you tell me about this person insulting you and treating you so cruelly, I feel so disturbed and I feel so much compassion for you, and I also feel some anger at them. That can help focus the conversation. You know, when it all comes down, most of us really don't want to be agreed with necessarily. We just want to be understood. And part of conveying that understanding is good, solid, active, empathic listening. Try it. You'll see the benefit.